There are very simple mistakes that can quickly ruin a fast. Now, I'm not talking about erasing all the benefits whatsoever, but enough to really be conscious of this. Now, I'm going to jump right in. The first mistake that can ruin a fast is jumping in to too long of a fast too fast, no pun intended. So here's what's interesting. If you're not adapted to fasting and you jump in and you do a longer fast, certainly you're going to get some benefit, but you're also going to get more detrimental effect than someone that has been adjusted to fasting. And that's simply because the cells have not become adapted to utilizing fats. So you actually get more out of your fast if you start with shorter fasts and slowly inch your way up to longer fasts. If I've never fasted before and I jump in and I do a 24-hour fast with zero experience, I'm gonna lose some weight and I'm gonna burn some fat. But additionally, my body is going to be really struggling to understand how to quickly switch over to using that fat as fuel, because it hasn't been conditioned to believe that that's a normal system and process yet. And there's actually a process that happens with nuclear receptor proteins, all kinds of things within our cells. This is very real stuff. So what I suggest you do is, if you have not started fasting, you start with 12-hour fasts for 2 weeks. Move to 14-hour fasts for 2 weeks. Then move to a 16-hour fast for like 4 weeks, and then find your sweet spot with like 18 or 20-hour fasts intermittently. Trust me, being patient with indoctrinating fasting into your lifestyle will help you out in the long term. Another thing that you can do to get ready for fasting is doing periodic stints of low carb. You don't need to go full keto, you don't even need to do that. But what you should do is maybe go 3 or 4 days with very low carb so that your body gets a little bit better at understanding the switchover from using carbs to using fats. We want to be good at that switch. So doing a little bit of low carb for a while can help you out with that. The next mistake that can simply ruin a fast without even really realizing it is fasting too frequently. You do start to lose the benefits of a fast if you're fasting too frequently. Okay, it's like white noise. It's like your body gets so adjusted to this fasting that you're no longer really getting the benefits of it anymore. Now, what we have to remember is that intermittent fasting is about restricting the time that we are eating, not just restricting calories. You probably will restrict calories inadvertently, but there are independent benefits to intermittent fasting outside of caloric restriction. So things happen with fasting that are totally outside the benefits of caloric restriction. What that means is that we need to make sure we're focusing on restricting time and making fasting the anomaly to our normal lifestyle. There is a study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition that had subjects overeat for 1 week. Then it had them restrict calories aggressively for 3 weeks. Then it had them go back to a refeeding for about 2 weeks, where they increased calories ever so slightly. What they found is that when they were in their caloric restriction phase, sure, they lost weight in that 3-week period, but they lost 5% of their muscle mass. That is huge. You want to know what the number one danger is with fasting? The number one danger is losing your muscle mass that is so critical to your metabolism. So they also found in this study that these subjects ended up having a decrease in their resting energy expenditure, the amount of calories they expend in a day. They had a decrease of 266 calories. That means they were burning 266 calories less at the end of this caloric restriction phase. Okay, and 48% of this had to do with what is called adaptive thermogenesis. Adaptive thermogenesis is where the body goes into that literal starvation mode, slows down the metabolism in an effort to preserve your muscle and to preserve your fuel. So, how do we get around this? Well, fasting, as I say all the time, should be a shock to the system. You should be at relatively moderate calories, even higher calories, and then have aggressive drops and then come back to moderate high, rather than this chronic kind of decrease in your metabolism. The next simple mistake is breaking your fast without realizing you're breaking your fast. And this can happen in a lot of different ways, but the one that probably happens the most is through various sweeteners or things that spike insulin. Now, I'm not going to rain on the insulin parade. I think insulin is an important hormone. It's very critical. But when we are fasting, we don't want to spike insulin. Insulin is problematic with fasting. It's not problematic for weight loss in general. There's different things there. But when it comes down to fasting, the last thing you really want is spiking insulin. Well, here's what's interesting. things will spike your insulin without you even realizing it. For example, there was a study that took a look at subjects that consumed sucrose, which is regular sugar, and then they measured their insulin 2 minutes after that. And then they consumed sucralose, Splenda, and they measured their insulin 2 minutes after that. They had a very similar insulin spike to Splenda, sucralose, as they did to sugar. What? It's that cephalic insulin response. It's sort of a kind of a preemptive thing, like the brain recognizes something sweet, so it preemptively sends a signal to the pancreas to start producing insulin. This doesn't happen in everyone though. That's what's wild. It could happen to you and not happen to me. And then next week it could happen to me and not happen to you. And unless you have the ability to test insulin on the fly, you're never gonna know. So is it really worth the risk? If you ask me, the fact that spiking your insulin could seriously negate the benefits of your fast is enough of a risk for me to just say, I'll just consume water, black coffee, black tea, green tea without the sweeteners. Or maybe I'll use some stevia, which doesn't spike insulin a whole lot. Or maybe, dare I say it, aspartame, which as horrible as it is, doesn't spike insulin as much as sucralose does. Now the next one is one that gets nuancy, and that is breaking your fast improperly. Can you erase the benefits of a good fast by not breaking your fast properly? Not necessarily, but over time, you can definitely miss out on some benefits, okay? Because at the end of a fast is your opportune time to consume protein and to restore sort of that muscle sparing effect within the body. It's also your ideal time to replenish glycogen in a proper way. So bottom line is consume protein first, and then 60, 90 minutes later, whatever, then consume a little bit more relaxed meals. However, I highly recommend that people increase their fat intake during their eating window. Why? Because like I mentioned before, if you start reducing your calories too much by simply not eating that much during your eating window, you run into this chronic caloric deficit problem. So quick ways to get healthy calories that have positive benefits. Okay, good fats like avocados, okay, maybe some pork rinds, things like that here and there where you're getting like some healthier options of fat. Okay, also things like macadamia nuts, things like pili nuts, things like these good monounsaturated fats that are going to improve insulin sensitivity and not hinder it. I popped a link down below for my favorite macadamia nuts from a company called House of Macadamias. Seriously the best. Okay, their onion flavor is unbelievable, but they also have macadamia nut bars that the first ingredient is literally macadamia nuts. So you're talking a bar that is predominantly macadamia nuts and it tastes like a candy bar. It's sweetened with, it doesn't have any sugar in it at all, so you're not gonna have this crazy insulin spike, and you can get good, healthy calories in, keep your calories where they need to be while maintaining insulin sensitivity potentially. Okay, so I popped a link down below that'll save you 20% off whatever you want from House of Macadamia, whether it's straight up macadamia nuts, whether it's the macadamia nut bars, whether it's their revolutionary new macadamia nut oil. Okay, if you're trying to get healthy fats in, I stand behind avocados and macadamia nuts. So that link down below for 20% off through House of Macadamia. The next mistake that people make, and I used to make this one all the time, is fasting when they are stressed out. Here's the thing. When you are fasting, you need to be able to understand your body a little bit. With great power comes great responsibility, right? So with that, if you know that you're stressed out, you probably shouldn't fast because stress increases cortisol. Fasting already increases cortisol. There was a study that was published in Psychoneuroendocrinology that demonstrated that when cortisol levels were higher, appetite was higher. And then there are also studies that demonstrate that when cortisol is higher, insulin sensitivity goes down. One of the biggest benefits, if not the biggest benefit, of fasting, independent of caloric restriction, is the improvement in insulin sensitivity. So what this means is that if you're stressed out, you're actually not getting nearly as much benefit with fasting as you would if you're not stressed out. Now, I used to get stressed out and I'd say, this is a great day for me to fast because it just makes it so that I cannot make a bad decision. I'm just black and white, I'm not eating, so I'm not gonna eat cruddy food like I normally would when I'm stressed. And that works, and that worked for me for a long time, and I lost a lot of weight with that. But I'll tell you, it's short-lived. If you wanna be doing this for a long time, you start to understand, oh, I'm stressed today. The last thing I wanna do is add more stress. Also, when you're increasing cortisol from stress plus fasting, that is tipping you over the ledge a little bit with cortisol. Meaning too much cortisol is going to start breaking down muscle. So stress plus fasting is probably not the best mix. And that goes right in line with the next one, which is sleep deprivation. You probably should not be fasting if you are chronically sleep deprived. For one, the fasting is going to impact your sleep, and two, the sleep is going to impact the benefits of your fast. But what I will suggest here is doing like a 14, maybe 16-hour fast if you're sleep deprived, but nothing longer than that. Okay, this time-restricted feeding can actually help you reset your circadian cues. It can help you out with that. But if you start pushing it beyond 16 hours, then you are not getting the benefit anymore. So I definitely recommend keep your fasting shorter if you must fast on a sleep-deprived sort of day. Then we move into hydration. It's funny because there are subjects that dry fast. Ramadan, they dry fast. But when they're dry fasting for 14, 16, maybe 18 hours, right? And they're doing it for these 30 days or so out of the year. When you are fasting, you should try to keep hyperhydrated. Hydrate more. Okay, hydration is going to regulate your appetite, so you're not going to feel as hungry. Okay, you're going to make better decisions. But also, being hydrated can improve how you utilize fat. Now, I know with dry fasting, when people reduce water intake, they lose more fat because there's like this whole hydrogen equation. It's kind of complicated. But long story long, when you are fasting, being hydrated is more likely to encourage fat mobilization. There are some studies that are coming out recently that are demonstrating that water does help us burn more fat. So being hydrated might be a very key component to successful fasting. So even though some people view fasting as eliminated all, I say add water in. Add water plus a little bit of salt. It's not going to hurt you, it's only going to help you. The next one is not moving. I want you to think about something, and although it might seem a little bit morbid at first, it makes a lot of sense. I want you to think of an athlete, someone that eats a fair bit of food, moves around a lot, and I want you to think of the energy that that person kind of gives off. Like if you're around an NFL player that's eating 5,000 calories per day, burning 5,000 calories per day, there's a certain energy to that person, right? Now I want you to think of someone that is in a hospital bed, not eating, frail, sick. And I want you to think about the energy that person gives off. It's not exactly the best energy, right? It's like just weak. So you ask the question here, like, okay, well, if I'm fasting, should I be working out? Should I be moving? If you're not eating and you're not moving, you're basically wasting away with your body having no reason to maintain skeletal muscle mass. If you are fasting and you're moving, then in this quote unquote starvation mode, your body sees your muscle as very relevant and very important and critical to survival. So when you are fasting, by sitting on your bum doing nothing or moving as little as possible, you are defeating the fat loss benefits and you're defeating the muscle sparing benefits. So work out during your fast. It's a huge mistake to not. And over the long term, it's going to decrease the effectiveness of your fast. If you do these simple things and you follow the rules that I'm kind of laying out here, you'll be able to successfully intermittent fast for decades without it ever becoming the norm and always retaining its powerful benefit. I'll see you tomorrow.